Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here. I've been using my channel recently to talk a lot about Gaza, which I want to continue doing. So I'm going to begin this by saying, in my description box there is the link to medical aid for Palestinians and the Gaza Oxfam appeal. Please write to your representatives, attend any protests and marches you can for the ceasefire. I'm sure you've seen the really distressing images coming out of Gaza and Palestine, the West Bank. And if we all come together, I really believe we can make a difference. Yeah, please keep sharing the voices of people from Gaza and make your voice heard when it comes to that ceasefire, because I think we all want everyone in the world to be able to live in peace and harmony and with their full rights. And we don't want to see death and destruction and innocent people being hurt. I wanted to say that before we go into it. Also, it's been quite a while since I've done any of these videos because of the situation in Gaza. But I think this one is relevant to that situation in general and abuse dynamics, and I couldn't not talk about the fact that Prince Harry has basically won his court case against MGN, that is Mirror Group newspapers. I'm also going to say I'm not feeling very well at the moment, you can probably tell by looking at me and my voice, but I hope you'll stick with me as we go through this. So we now have official ruling from a judge in a court of law, a British court, the High Court, which a lot of the people who despise Harry so much, they talk so much about, you know, oh, British values and he's letting down Britain. Well, this is a British court system, and it has found that Prince Harry was, as he's always said, always suspected, a victim of phone hacking. It's been found, proved. And bear in mind that because this is historic in terms of this phone hacking, and these, we're talking about hacking the phone of a young person who'd gone through grief and didn't really have much power, compared to a whole organisation designed to invade privacy. You know, and this had all come before him, like to all his other family members. Like, he was born into this situation. It's taken him and his bravery to kind of step out of that, and ironically, although he's being accused of destroying the royal family, his actions in this case and taking that forward have actually protected pretty much all that family. You know, no matter how horrible they might be to him or how they've let him be used and smeared, and they've let him deal with that or might even have had a hand in it, he has actually protected them and their children by doing this. All this time they were saying, oh, you know, he's making it up, he's just a whiner, he's not a real victim. But now the court of law, he's taken it through the court of law, and they've decided that he was a victim of phone hacking. And even, you know, some people are even now trying to say, oh, well, not every case was proved and, you know, we can't find all of it. What I'm saying is this is a huge organisation against one boy, right? A scapegoat with mental health issues brought on by the abuse of the system that he was in, right? Taking that on all by himself. Of course, I mean, they're going to be trying to cover their tracks. We know they're very slimy people and they try and get away with stuff. So this was so blatant and so, I mean, it must have been pretty widespread, the fact that they've been able to get this stuff on them, right? And I think we all knew, it's like the unspoken thing here in Britain, that we know that the tabloids have a huge amount of power, and they like to pretend that they don't, that they're just entertainment, but they do it to our politicians as well. If you rock the boat, if you challenge the status quo in any way, then they will come for you. And they have so much power here that they can turn people on you, to the extent that, for example, Jeremy Corbyn, who was the former leader of our opposition, I think he's a great, kind, good man. He, very much like Harry, has been consistently against the abuse of the tabloids, and how there's so much power in that, like, misreporting, and how it's just so cruel above all else, as well as inaccurate. And the power that they have is obviously dangerous in a democracy, to be able to do that kind of thing and to invade people's privacy and to get away with it, to hold people to ransom. You know, it's like frightening all the public figures. Do what you want, or we'll do this. We will invade your privacy. You know, we will smear you, we'll make people hate you. It's just bullying. And because he was that sort of person, they smeared him. And now our new leader of the opposition is palling up with the tabloids, because it's known, like, it's just something we all know here in Britain. And I don't know how easy it is to prove, but we know that if you go up against the status quo, if you go up against the tabloids, they're going to do everything in their power to destroy you. And not everyone can cope with that. And they shouldn't have to. But that's the way all abuse works, right? That's the way all bullying works. The idea is that you make it so difficult for that victim to come forward that they just think, I can't handle it and I'm going to be made into the villain. On top of all the stuff I've gone through, I have to try and prove it. Like, I have to try and meanwhile, this power imbalance is happening where you're being attacked by people of this great power and they are providing the information to the public. So anyway, now they picked the wrong victim in Harry. And I've said this in other videos before, but Harry was raised to be a spare. He was raised with two things that have made him impossible to stop here, really. One is that he was raised to be that spare. So he was raised to think that he had to put aside how he felt. He's the damage control. Like, over the years, he will have learned, even if it's not like explicitly said to him, you're going to take the hits, you're going to be the wild child, and this is so we can prop up William. And that wasn't William's fault when he was growing up. It's because the system of monarchy is hereditary privilege. It's got to be like, oh, this is the golden child, this is going to be our monarch, they've got to be better than the others. If you watch The Crown, they portray this in a kind of fictional way, that there's always a number one and a number two, and the number two always has to be kind of written as wild and crazy and made out to be, they have to present the main one as ultimately the right one, because otherwise their system, it can't be merit. So there's no way that the second can ever outshine the first, otherwise their system collapses, which wasn't always William's fault because there were kids born into that system. So he was already born for that. He was already very used to being attacked by the press from a young age. So in some ways they created the person that has actually managed to get them, really. And number two is the idea of the life of service. So he's been told all his life that the royal family is about life of service. I'm not a monarchist. I can't stand the idea of the monarchy, and I think that's a lie. I don't think the monarchy is a life of service. But what matters is that he believed it and he tries to live it. Like, that went into his brain and he sees himself as, you know, he was a soldier. That's what he was taught, active service. Sometimes you're a shield for people. Like, sometimes you have to try and serve the people. The problem with Harry is that he actually took those things to heart, unlike lots of the other royals who realised it was just, I think, a lie to maintain their position in the monarchy. He took those things to heart, which ultimately meant he couldn't exist within that awful system. So we've seen over the past couple of years, I mean, we all know this, that the campaign against Harry and Meghan has been extreme. And it has been intimidation all the way. Because ultimately, they're trying to show, like any bully, that it's not worth standing up to us, because we will destroy you. Like, do you really want to take us on because we'll destroy you in the hearts of the people? We'll make people despise you. We'll mock you. We will drive you and your wife into crisis. We will potentially make you lose your wife because we will make life so miserable for her. We will make you so unwelcome. We'll make you hate figures. Like, and it all spins out from there. Every single day in these magazines, like the magazine covers, the tabloid covers, and every day it's going into people's minds at the supermarket, oh, these are the bad guys, these are the bad guys. To the extent that, you know, I mean, this is for another video, but the idea of them ever visiting back here, they would need protection. I mean, and I believe that, you know, if you're born into a system like that with no consent anyway, and that automatically makes you a target, I think you're entitled to that protection anyway. But the fact that the hatred is so commonplace here, and it's not just perpetrated by the tabloids. The tabloids start all that awfulness, and then the other publications run with it. So we've got these like fake versions of Harry and Meghan that some of the public believe are real, and it's so normal to see that, and that puts them in actual danger, genuine danger. It puts their children in danger. But Harry hasn't backed down. Now, I believe the idea was always to make him back down, and they miscalculated because they didn't think about who they're dealing with here. They are talking about somebody who believes in the life of service, somebody who's been a soldier, somebody who's lived in that royal system and always been the spare and the scapegoat. This is not someone who's going to back down. They've made a huge mistake and a huge miscalculation. Now, also something that Harry did, which broke their power over him, and why they tried to smear the book, right? If you remember when Spare came out, you know, I think it's a decent book. It's a very interesting book. I enjoyed reading it. It gave me a real insight into what it's like within that system and within that firm. But regardless of like whether or not it's a good book, it was mocked, right? Everything in it was he was humiliated with. But it was actually a strategic move, because it was saying, I'm going to write from my perspective anything you might have on me. These are my mistakes. This is what happened. I'll tell you from my own mouth. I shouldn't even really have to reveal that, but I think Harry knew they were going to try and use anything they could to try and destroy him, and so he said, you know what? I'm interested in the truth here, so I'm going to be truthful. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, you can make up your own minds, but you're not having the power over me. You're not going to say to me, oh, we're going to reveal this unless you do this. And I think that, again, is why they constantly smeared him in the book, because they understood at a deeper level that's what he was doing. He was saying, this is all of it from me. I believe he covered up a lot of stuff for the rest of his family members. But, you know, this is my story. These are the things I've done wrong. Like, do your worst. I've already told you all of it in my words. And I'm still going to hold you accountable for the phone hacking and for the way you've treated me, my family, how you still treat my family, and how they treated his mother. Do you remember in Spare, there's the section where Harry talks about wanting to take on the... I can't remember exactly. It's like taking on the press or challenging the press, I believe. And his father and his brother say it's a suicide mission. They're scared of the press as well. You know, Harry says in the Oprah interview that we should have compassion for them in that situation, in that particular situation, and I think he's right. Because what we're looking at is people who are born into a system, they don't opt in. And in their life, they're going to do things wrong. They're going to do things which are, you know, not great. We all do things like that, but they are on the public stage against their will. They're also going through a lot of intrusion. They're living a very odd life. Now, I believe, I mean, what's implied, and which I think is probably very true, is that the tabloids have awful things about family members. I think they do. And I think the family members are afraid of that coming out. They are afraid that it will impact the monarchy if it does come out. And I think it's put them in a state of constant appeasement. You know, we have to work with them, and to the extent that they have to offer a sacrifice. So it's not them, which looks like it's Harry and Meghan, and which is all the more appalling because with Meghan, the tabloids kind of whipped up these racial stereotypes about her. They kind of appealed to the racism that already existed here, and they went with that. And I honestly believe it was all a threat. I still think that the Harry thing isn't even about Harry. I think he's still being used as a spare. I think if you look deeper into it, I think it's a threat to any member of that royal family that might get ideas like Harry. You know, they do it to scapegoats in a family system. Don't stand up because this is what we'll do to you. Look what we can do to him. And we've got way more on you. There's, you know, if he was only the spare, we've got all this on the air. Like, we can bring you down. Do you want to be responsible for that? It's all a threat. And I do think, this is just personal opinion, I think that is why William and Harry, I think there's a lot of, I don't know their personal relationship, it's not my right to, but I can imagine that's why it feels difficult and there's animosity. Because I think in Harry doing this, I think the tabloids have created this awful system where it puts the other family members into a state of fear. Because they're frightened that someone's going to go up against this bully, because what if it comes out, like, what if they take it out on us, kind of thing. But you've got to stand up. You know, otherwise these people just continue forever and ever, and it's not right. And as I said before, Harry doing this is protecting William's children. It is. He's taken all those hits. It's been proved in a court of law. And that's going to protect those kids. That is a brave thing to do. I'm not going to go through Harry's whole statement because it's really long and I'm not feeling 100%. But maybe I will another day. But so he thanks his legal team, but he's talking about how it's not just about hacking, it's about a systematic practice of unlawful and appalling behaviour, followed by cover-ups and destruction of evidence, the shocking scale of which can only be revealed through these proceedings. The court has found that Mirror Group's principal board directors, their legal department, senior executives and editors such as Piers Morgan clearly knew about or were involved in these illegal activities. Between them, they even went as far as lying under oath to Parliament during the Leveson inquiry, to the Stock Exchange, and to us all ever since. The journey to justice can be a slow and painful one, and since bringing my claim almost 5 years ago, defamatory stories and intimidating tactics have been deployed against me at my family's expense. And so, as I too have learned through this process, patience is in fact a virtue, especially in the face of vendetta journalism. He also talks about how they attacked his character and made out he was crazy, that he was paranoid. They did this to Diana, remember? Oh no, none of this ever happened. You're crazy. He's paranoid. He's gone mad. They did this to his mum, and guess what? He was right. He was right. He stood up against these giants with all this power, who hid a lot of their evidence, but even then he got them. Right? He's been proved that he's not a liar. And I hope people understand that in this case, if they learn anything from this, do not trust the media. Do not trust those tabloids. Like, look, check sources for yourselves. Because they've tried to tell you for a long time that Harry is delusional, that he's crazy, right? That he's being controlled by the evil Meghan, that he's a traitor to Britain. And now we understand why they were doing that. He was right. I want people to recognise that and remember it. He's absolutely right that intimidating tactics were deployed against him so that he'd be quiet. And he wasn't. So I hope people understand that the next time they see some awful headline about Harry, I hope they understand that all this happens behind the scenes. And people have to wonder, and again, it's like Jeremy Corbyn, you know, why are they trying to get you to hate these people so much? Like, do your own research. Like, please don't just look at the tabloids. Understand who these people are, what they stand for, and think about why headlines like this might be coming up, right? What's the deeper meaning behind it? Like, what's the play? Our country is absolutely terrified of people who want accountability. Genuinely, because the high-ups in our country, the people in power, a lot of them have got there because maybe they started out as idealistic and they thought, oh, I'm going to change the system. They got a certain way in, the power was too much, and they thought, you know what, I want to rise to the top. I'm going to compromise here, compromise there, and then they just become shady. You know, I believe that's what's happened with Keir Starmer, with so many politicians. They become part of that system because they're not brave enough. They don't have the courage and convictions to say, I don't care like how you're going to come at me, I'm going to hold on to my principles. So all the people that get high enough are people that are approved of or will play the games of the powerful media figures, right? And the media outlets, so the tabloids. Because the other ones are either smeared, so they try and make people despise and hate them, there's a huge campaign, or they're so intimidated and defamed that they can't cope anymore as a human being and they drop out of the system. Therefore, most of our system is made up of people who are playing the game. Now, I wanted to talk about Piers Morgan here, and we've spoken about him before, but he is a slimy, slimy man. You know, he's got a strange, obsessive relationship with Meghan, which I still find really, really disturbing, and people don't emphasise enough, right? This man was a huge fan of Meghan Markle. He met her once for, he described it as like, you know, a friendly drink, but she was coming over to do press for Suits, right? She doesn't know much about him. She's thinking, this is a journalist. I don't know the full details of that situation off the top of my head, but to her, it wasn't like a huge big deal. You know, I believe she was friendly, but she didn't want further contact, and he described it as being ghosted. So what really happened is that he suffered an ego blow. Right? He's an egotistical person, and people who have abusive personalities, people who might be narcissistic, right? People who are totally self-centered and think the world revolves all around them, you know, they see that as an ego blow. Like, how can you like reject me like that? And it's not rejection to anybody else. This is a woman who came to do like a press tour, and she doesn't know him or anything like that. It's not like they're close friends, but he's fixated on her. And then now, like, he's so angry, I believe, and I think we see this with a lot of people, you know, scarily. He's so angry that he couldn't have her that he tried to destroy her. Oh, I wouldn't want her anyway. Oh, she's trash, she's rubbish. And then his weird obsession with hating on Harry because it's pure jealousy. People like this have, although they project like a big persona and ego, they actually have a very small sense of self, and their self-esteem is like weirdly low. So they live in like a sort of state of delusion where they create this image of themselves, and they're not really very able to look at their own mistakes, right? Or see themselves as flawed in any way. I think because if they acknowledge that, they'd fall apart because they deep down feel pretty worthless, right? Which doesn't excuse their behaviour. But they have to build up this image of themselves, and everyone has to go along with it. And Meghan, without even realising it, caused offence to this man's ego. And how many times do we see this in actual life, right? If you're catcalled or something, you know, and then suddenly someone's being really abusive to you. Someone's being cruel. Have you ever had somebody online, if you're online, I have before, you know, somebody who's attracted to you in some way, and at first they're nice to you, and then when they express their attraction and you're like, thank you, I'm flattered, but I'm not interested, then suddenly it turns into, oh, well, you're ugly anyway, you're this, you're that, I didn't want you in the first place. It's a very, very small sense of self, and these people are lashing out like children because they don't understand that you're a person, right? A full human being. You are meant to be part of you're meant to be attached to them. Like, you're not supposed to have your own thoughts and feelings. I think what we've seen in his attacks on Harry, he tries to cover it up, you know, he tries to say, oh, I'm actually defending the royal family, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I don't think it's any of that. I think he is so wounded still by the fact that this beautiful, intelligent woman didn't really want much more to do with him, that he just can't get over it. He's so jealous of Harry. In his statement, he talks about him having like a California tan. You know, it's bitterness. It's bitterness from a man who has nothing much to give for himself. He is so jealous, and he thinks we can't see it. And it's, you'd almost feel sorry for him if he didn't cause so much harm to people, because this is somebody who's in a bit of a crisis. He doesn't seem to have, people who behave in this way don't have much self-esteem, really. They build up that fake persona of themselves, like he does, the great Piers Morgan, and I'm the truthful broadcaster, and he attaches himself to power because I think maybe inside, maybe he feels a bit powerless. I'm actually a friend of the royal family and they've thanked me personally for what I've done, and that's worrying in itself and should be investigated, because I'd be interested to know exactly who is thanking Piers Morgan for his obsessive, dangerous, awful coverage, which it's just, he's been able to obsessively stalk them and harass them for so many years now on the big channels, and he's been invited on. Like, it's just awful. Now, in 2003, someone found this, and I'd not seen it. So on camera, he's actually talking to Charlotte Church. She's really lovely, in 2003. And he's talking about that journalists know that with mobile phones, if you know the PIN code, you can listen to a celebrity's voicemail. He actually says, and he says to Charlotte Church in this video, "Are you really telling me that journalists aren't going to do that? If they can ring up Charlotte Church's mobile phone, listen to all of her messages. Now, all you have to do, and I know it's hard because celebrities don't like doing anything for themselves, is actually change your security number." Now, let's just have a quick look at that. So, are you really telling me that journalists aren't going to do that if they can ring up and listen to your messages? And this is him revealing himself. And this is what people like this do. Because to most people, that isn't what you would do. It's like if you saw a house, you're walking past a house and you saw the door was unlocked, most people would carry on walking, right? Or they might tell the owner if they knew them, "Oh, your house is unlocked." They wouldn't go in and steal the stuff. These people justify it, right? Everyone would do it. And if I wasn't doing it, someone else would do it. So it's justified. It's not normal. Normal people and journalists aren't going to do that. That's not the principle of a real journalist, is it? And that's him making excuses, right? In his mind, even his defense of this here, saying that it's journalism to do this, is revealing. Now then he is patronizing and belittling, and he talks down to her and he said, "Now all you have to do, and I know it's hard because celebrities don't like doing anything for themselves, is actually change your security number." And that's victim blaming. Right? It's like, all you have to do is get a different lock on your house and then maybe I won't rob you. The way he talks down to her, the bitterness he has towards celebrities, it's hard because celebrities don't like doing anything for themselves. It is a deep bitterness, and I think deep down in his mind he feels like a failure, maybe? Maybe he feels like he's failed, maybe his self-esteem feels bad. And so he's so bitter and angry, I'm taking it out on these celebrities, but these are human beings. This is about consent. The way he talks about it as if, well, that's just what happens and, journalists do it. It's not him directly saying he's doing it, but it's him saying that he's aware, and his language is justifying it, basically, and acting like, well, all the celebrity has to do is change their PIN number, so that's fine. And people like this will always blame the victim, by the way. Like, you can often tell in that personality. Any situation, they will find a way to blame a victim rather than the perpetrator, because deep down inside, they know, either on a conscious or subconscious level, that they themselves are a bully and a manipulator, and that they have to stand with the status quo against the victim because they need to protect themselves. They need to devalue the victim before the victim comes forward. Essentially, that's the tactic, isn't it? I wanted to have a look at his statement that he made. It's quite extraordinary, this statement, and it's satisfying in a strange way, even though it does make you feel a bit angry. But I wanted to read, I think I might read it in full, so forgive me, it's a bit long. "Okay, got a short statement for you. Today, a judge in the High Court in London has ruled on various cases, including Prince Harry's claim against Mirror Group newspapers, where I was an editor until 2004. The judgment finds there is just one article relating to the Prince published in the Mirror during my entire 9-year tenure as editor. He thinks may have been involved in some unlawful information gathering. To be clear, I had then and still have zero knowledge of how that particular story was gathered." So I want to pause there. It's pretty interesting. He's talking about how that particular story was gathered. Not, I have zero knowledge of any phone hacking or anything like that. It's that particular story. I had no knowledge of how that was gathered. I think that's pretty interesting. He goes on to say, "All his other claims against the Daily Mirror under my leadership were rejected. With regard to the judge's other references to me in his judgment, I also want to reiterate, as I have consistently said for many years now, I have never hacked a phone or told anybody else to hack a phone, and nobody has produced any actual evidence to prove that I did. I wasn't called as a witness. It's important for people to know this by either side in the case, nor was I asked to provide any statement. I would have happily agreed to do either or both of those things had I been asked, nor did I have a single conversation with any of the Mirror Group lawyers during the entire legal process, so I wasn't able to respond to many of the false allegations spewed about me by the court by old foes of mine with an axe to grind. So look at that as well. Harry has been found to be a victim of phone hacking, but abusers will always make it into an equal both sides issue, right? Old foes of mine with an axe to grind, you know, oh, we're in a great battle, and it raises his status, right? He, to Harry and Meghan, is like a horrible, nasty little parasite that is causing great harm. They don't see him as some, you know, oh, we're in a noble battle with each other. They just think he's an awful person, a dangerous person, and they just want him to be held to account. But watch how Piers Morgan even now is trying to big himself up by acting like it's this war between them, you know, old foes with an axe to grind. Like, he doesn't mean anything to that couple beyond how awful he's been. And he's still trying to position himself, you know, the proximity to power that he likes to present is really interesting, most of which, inexplicably, were not even challenged in my absence by the Mirror Group Counsel. But I know the judge appears to have believed the evidence of Omid Scobie, who lied about me in his new book, and he lied about me in court. The whole world now knows him to be a deluded fantasist. That's interesting, because that's what they said about Harry. You know, he's a deluded fantasist. And then it turned out he was telling the truth. So it's very interesting, and something to note with people like this, abusers, they love to devalue their victim, right? So even if you catch them, then it's suddenly, oh, but the victim is this, you know. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant what the victim is. Like, you know, maybe if they're a deluded fantasist, if the court finds that you're guilty, right, then irrelevant. They love to do that. They love to change suddenly. It pushes away from their behaviour, and it's, oh, but the victim's an awful, awful person. And that's worrying. And he believed the evidence of Alistair Campbell, another proven liar, who spun this country into an illegal war. Now, what I will say here is he is correct about that in the sense that Alistair Campbell is a proven liar, and he did, I believe, lead us into an illegal war, and I can't stand him. But is that relevant to the phone hacking? I don't think so. I think that's, again, trying to move the situation. Like, I can't stand Alistair Campbell, but using that at this point, again, I'm going to try and smear the people who've accused me, because I can't really say I didn't do the things, so I'm going to try and accuse all these people of other things and remind everyone how much they can't stand them. You know, it's an interesting tactic from him, and he thinks it's so slick, but we can see through it. Finally, I want to say this. And it's interesting that this last bit is about Harry. So bear in mind, he's actually got war criminal Alistair Campbell on his list. Omid Scobie, who's allegedly, you know, he says has written all these lies about him. But he saves his final anger for Prince Harry, the boy who was born into this system, harassed by the press, whose mother was killed by the press. Like, this is where his main anger lies, and it's so telling. Prince Harry's outrage at the intrusion into the private lives of the royal family is only matched by his own ruthless, greedy, and hypocritical enthusiasm for doing it himself. He talked today about the appalling behaviour of the press, but this is a guy who's repeatedly trashed his family in public for hundreds of millions of dollars, even as two of its most senior and respected members were dying, his grandparents. It's hard to imagine, frankly, more appalling behaviour than that. As for him saying this is a good day for truth, the Duke has been repeatedly exposed in recent years as someone who wouldn't know the truth if it slapped him around his California tanned face. The jealousy is so obvious here. He's so jealous of Harry, and I don't even know if he's aware enough of himself to acknowledge that. It's just real jealousy. He demands accountability for the press, but refuses to accept any for himself, for smearing the royal family, his own family, as a bunch of callous racists without producing a shred of proof to support those disgraceful claims. This is interesting because Piers Morgan is making it worse. You know, that's a headline. The royal family, bunch of callous racists. And I do believe, you know, other people have said this could potentially be him signalling to the royals, you better not let me fall here, because I know that some of you guys approve of me, and if I'm going down, I'll take you guys down. Some people have suggested that might be what he's doing here. Maybe. He also says he's on a mission to reform the media, when it's become clear his real mission, along with his wife, is to destroy the British monarchy, and I will continue to do whatever I can to stop them. Merry Christmas. So he's now presenting himself as, it's not about the phone hacking anymore. Oh, no. He is now the superhero who is there to apparently stop Harry and Meghan from trashing the royal family. Apparently that's what this is all about. So when an abuser is caught out, they deny, deflect, devalue and dismiss. So, oh, I didn't do it. Obviously in this situation he's been caught out. So he'll then deflect and he'll say, oh, look at what this person did. Look at what that person did over there. And it's like, that's not relevant to your situation, is it? Devalue. So they'll devalue the person that they've hurt, the victim. So they'll make it into, okay, right, you've proved I've done this to this person, but they are, like, they're such a horrible person, they're this, they're that, so maybe it's all right that I did it. And after they've done that, they will completely devalue them. So it doesn't matter anyway. Like, it's not like, you know, it's not like it matters. It's not like what I did matters. And look how it moves. It starts from, oh, I'd never do that. I never did that, to, it doesn't matter that I did that because this person's like this and this person's like that. It's Darvo. So deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. That was a bit weird when I did that on my hand. But that's what he's trying to do. So he's now trying to make himself into a victim of some sort of, like, attack from these foes, right? He is pretending that the power is in a different place. He is pretending that he is now being brought down because he is the warrior for truth and he's there defending the British royal family and he's been taken down. And what they do is they project. Okay, so you learn so much about their worldview from the way they portray other people. And this statement was so much more about attacking Harry, and of course it mentions Meghan, like his wife, but it's so much about attacking Harry rather than, you know, if he was an innocent person who'd been falsely accused, and the judge doesn't say that he is, if he was, wouldn't you still be able to have compassion? Wouldn't you still say, it's awful? You know, the idea that there's phone hacking is disgusting. And I'm so sorry that happened under my watch. I wasn't aware of it, but I am sorry that it happened under my watch. And, you know, obviously that's not a good thing. And I feel compassion because, you know, this is somebody who was born into the public eye and he's gone through a lot and his mother was targeted and I can completely understand it. That's not what he's gone for like a normal person. It's attack. The anger and the bitterness and the jealousy tells you everything you need to know. Like, he exposes himself by accident. All the things he accuses Harry of being and he accuses him of doing, he is himself, because that's what these people do. You know, they can't comprehend that sometimes people have principles and they stand up for things because they think it's the right thing to do or because they're interested in the truth. So genuinely in his own mind, it might be that when he sees Harry standing up and saying these things, he can only understand it through his worldview. He's thinking, well, the only reason I'd ever stand up would be if there was some benefit to me. Therefore, it must be that anyone standing up, you know, it must be to their benefit. And you see this a lot, like when people see you caring about social campaigns, you know, and things in the world, people sometimes can accuse you of, oh, you're just jumping on the bandwagon, oh, you just want, you know, you want to join the club, like you want to make it about yourself, you know, you want to jump on the issue, because they can't understand that there are people out there, lots of people who genuinely care about others and want to help other people. Like, to them, they can only think about how they behave. With Piers Morgan, the way he acts around everything Harry does, the way he depicts it always as being self-serving and narcissistic and for something, you know, like to his benefit, it tells you how Piers Morgan's mind works, that he can't comprehend somebody doing something because it's the right thing to do. If you can only see sinister and manipulative reasons for people doing good things, then that all that tells me is that that's the only reason why you as a person do those things, right? Because you think, oh, it makes me look good, or I can be manipulative, or I can use it to my benefit. I think it's quite obvious that everything Piers Morgan does and has done is self-interest. And yeah, I just thought we needed to like go through that. I'm really happy that Harry has got this validation, because it must have been so difficult to see the world's press, well, in our country, in the UK, in England at least, you know, trying to smear him as this deluded person. It's like what they did to his mum, and try and attack his wife, and to tell him that, you know, it wasn't happening, you know, the phone hacking wasn't happening, and, you know, why would we do that? We weren't doing that. And always when there's an abuse dynamic like this, it's difficult for someone to come forward, because often they're in a position of less power when it happens. You know, they're up against people with a lot of power, because that's how abuse works. But for him to do this so publicly is a huge victory. And it will protect so many people in the public eye. Even the people that smear him and attack him, it's protecting them. Really, this is protecting all of us. So I'm really, really glad for him that, you know, this is the outcome. And it will be interesting. I'm sure we're going to see Piers Morgan continue to have tantrums, and Darvo, there's going to be more blaming of Harry. But, yeah, it was a good result. And I'm just glad that there's this official, you know, validation, so that people can really start to understand, and even people who didn't realise before, they might start to look back at all this stuff and this coverage of Harry and think, hang on, why am I why are they saying this in this context? You know, you can only hope that they're going to look back and understand that it seemed to be part of an intimidation campaign to make him stop. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please remember the links to medical aid for Palestinians and for the Gaza Oxfam appeal. Really, really important. We need that ceasefire. So, yeah, I love you loads, and I'll see you really soon. Bye.